Well, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Topic UFO. Our guest tonight is Suzanne Chancellor, and she is a lifelong abductee / experiencer. Things for her started back in 1996 after reading the book Communion, which seemed to have brought up some memories going back all the way to 1966. And we're going to talk to her about what's happened since 1996. She took her story public by starting her own radio show entitled Random Alien Brain Droppings. And I got to tell you, that's what caught my eye, was the name of this show. I just thought was very unique, very interesting to say the least. She's done one personal speaking engagement and has another one scheduled coming up here on September 6th, 7th, and 8th in Portland, Maine. And we'll talk to her about that as well. And she's also in the process of writing a couple of books that we'll talk to her about. So, with that said, Suzanne, are you out there?
Yes, I am, Rick. How are you tonight?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for taking time out of your day to come talk to us.
Well, thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, you're very welcome. So, in reviewing your bio here, I see that things kind of all started for you, in a way, back in 1996. And before we get started, let me ask you a question. And I see this a lot online, is people will refer to themselves as abductees and experiencers. What's the difference between an abductee and an experiencer? Or is there a difference?
In my case, I really use that term in a sense that I think they are both the same. And I think in the earlier years when I started speaking about this publicly, which was a couple of years ago, I really used the word abductee. But as I started getting into a lot more personal research, trying to figure out what happened to me in my life, I started realizing that there was a lot more to the actual experience itself. And I hated labeling myself as an abductee, because the more I started doing my research and hearing other people's stories, I started realizing that maybe it's not just what we thought it was. Maybe it's not necessarily just a physical, quote-unquote, abduction that's happening here. And maybe it's just a bigger experience, per se. So I kind of like to use the two together, try and get people to identify with the word abductee, and then adding experiencer onto it, because I think, like I said, there's a lot more involved in the phenomenon surrounding the abduction phenomenon.
Gotcha. So, going back to 1996, things started after you read the book Communion. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
So take us back to that time and explain to us how this all opened up, I guess you would say.
Well, at the time, I had a very young daughter, and actually, did you say 1996? It's actually 1986.
Oh, no, yes. I had down 1996. So it started in 1986. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
That is when the book came out. I believe it was in 1985. And my daughter she was just born, and I was at the bookstore with her, and I walked in the bookstore, and they have the new releases right in the very front, and I saw the cover of that book, and I almost dropped her.
Wow.
And I was just, I don't know, something just hit me, and I had to pick it up. So I picked up the book, and I looked at the cover leaf, and I started reading it, and I thought, I have to get this book. There's something about it that resonated with me. I wasn't quite sure what it was, but I just knew that I had to buy it, and I read it in about a day and a half. I could not put it down.
Now, before this time, you had no recollections of any abduction in your life? or what?
No, I think it was more thinking that I had all these really vivid dreams as a child.
Ah, okay.
And I had a lot of odd experiences throughout my life. I had a lot of precognition and a lot of psychic awareness with myself. I felt a little bit psychic, but I never really thought much more of it than just that. But upon reading the book, there were so many similarities in his experience, especially those in his childhood, that resonated with me completely. And it just started making sense. My life started to make sense at that point. So all of a sudden I thought, okay, wait a minute. That experience that I had as a child when I dreamed that X, Y, and Z happened now was in 3D reading this book.
Wow.
Yes.
Now, I'm sure a lot of people would say, well, this book just reinforced these vivid dreams, or something along that lines. But you feel that it truly opened up your subconscious or whatever to allow you to get the truth out of what actually happened to you.
Yes.
Very strange. And how did that make you feel? That must have been quite an epiphany.
I was horrified, actually. I was horrified because all of a sudden this huge wave of fear came over me that something happened to me that was beyond my control. And it frightened me, but I didn't have anybody to talk to about it. It was something that was so taboo.
Right.
And I was a mother.
Yeah.
I was so afraid that people were going to say, okay, this chick has definitely lost her marbles. And she does not need to be around any children and, whatever. So many things came up in my head that I just basically kept it inside for years.
Yeah,
But
and we can laugh about it now, but yeah, I'm sure that must have been a terrible feeling to be locked in like that.
Well, it was mortifying. And ironically, within the next few years, I don't know if it was because I became aware of it that things started happening even more. And I recognized them because I was aware of what had happened. And the similarities between my childhood experiences and the things that were happening at that present time were identical. And then one experience in particular involved my daughter. And then I realized that it was real because she actually, at 3 years old, discussed it with me the next day.
Wow. Tell us about that. What happened? What did she talk to you about?
Well, it was one of the strangest but most enlightening experience I think I had had at that point. And all of a sudden, it went from a fear element to a feeling of bewilderment. I had a dream, and I'm sure you've heard that term millions of times. We all tend to go right to that phrase when speaking about this experience because it's the only thing that seems comfortable for us. And this dream involved, I felt that I was awake, and I was laying in bed. I couldn't sleep. And I was engaged at the time to be married, and my fiance was sleeping in bed next to me. And I saw all of these strange lights on the ceiling. And at that point, I'm looking at the lights. They look like little rainbows, like prismatic shapes, just swirling around the ceiling. And I thought, well, that's strange. And at that moment, a gold disc flew across my bed, and it just manifested into a being right next to me on my left side, on the side of the bed. And when I went to look at what it was, I realized that I couldn't move.
Wow.
And I was just scared to death. I mean, obviously, the only thing I could do was move my eyes from left to right. And this woman, it was a woman, a female voice started to speak to me, but telepathically. And she says to me, "Where I come from, marriage is the most sacred part of our existence. And I am giving you the chance to experience this if you wish." Now, that was a very interesting message to receive from somebody in your bedroom that you don't know in the middle of the night, right?
Yeah, that manifested from a golden disc.
Right. Okay. And the only thing I could think was that I was so glad that she didn't look what she really looked like, because I felt as if she was manifesting into something that would not frighten me. And she obviously read my thoughts, because she said to me again in my head, if you would like to see what we look like, then look at the window. And I was frozen with fear, but at the same time piqued with curiosity. And I just tilted my eyes to the side, to the window, and I could see a mantis being hanging from my windowsill.
Oh, Jesus.
And if that's not going to knock your socks off, after everything else that had happened, I just literally was so shocked. And it was so strange, because at that moment that I had that fear, my door flew open to the bedroom, and she looked at the door and just went right through the wall. And in came three little blue beings. Now I'm thinking, this is absolutely absurd at this point. What else could happen? I mean, this is like a circus, And these beings stood at the end of my bed, and they said, "It's Elise. We can't get her to stop throwing up." Now, Elise is my daughter. And I'm thinking, what in the heck? And at that moment, as a mother, that was the number one thing on my mind. And I don't know if I snapped out of it or what, but I just got up out of my bed and I ran down the hallway, and she was crying. And I looked at her and I said, "Elise, are you okay?" She says, "I'm going to throw up, Mommy. I'm going to throw up." And she just started vomiting all over the bed.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Tell me.
Now, I got to stop you here for a second, because, just to hear this story just out of the blue, I think most people would say, "Oh, you were just dreaming, sleep paralysis, what have you." What really caught my ear just now is when you mentioned the number one, you said you were paralyzed basically, but you could move your eyes back and forth. And then you said these three blue beings. Now, I've had people on this show that have given that exact description. They made it very clear and very pronounced that this was a blue, kind of glowing, neonish entity.
Yes.
It looked kind of like a gray, but it was blue and it glowed somewhat. How could that how could you possibly have dreamed that, and then somebody you don't know, hundreds or 1,000 miles away, do have the exact same experience?
Good question.
That's a little freaky.
It is. It gets freakier, because that validation from you right now is, I've only been doing my own research for the past 3 years. So for me to hear that from you is definitely a validation for me as well. Because yes, we can say it's a vivid dream, what have you, but ironically, my daughter, after I got her all cleaned off and put her back to bed, in the morning, we woke up and I was serving her breakfast, and my fiance, we had a little inside joke, because he knew I was an experiencer. I had told him everything. And we had a kind of an inside joke that if something happened the night before, now he didn't wake up during this whole experience with my daughter, so which was interesting. But he said to me, "Did the visitors come last night? Because I think something happened." Now, that was my feeling, that he sensed something but was in some sort of paralyzed state that he couldn't react. And I said, I kind of nodded, but I kind of shushed him and I said, "Don't say anything," because my daughter was in the room. And when I went over to the table to bring her her orange juice, I saw she was doodling a little picture. And the picture was of a little, it was like a round face with little round black eyes and had a little body and had this little squiggly line over its head. And I said, "Oh, honey, well, that's really cute. What is that?" And she says, "Well, that's the animal from my dream last night."
Mhm.
And I said, "Well, honey, that doesn't really look like an animal." And she says, "Well, they're not really animals, but they're not really people either." Now, I'm inside, I'm just freaking out because I'm
I'm
thinking
sure.
I don't want to frighten her. I don't want to prompt her, but and the same token, I do, because I knew that she was involved somehow in this experience. And I said, "Well, honey, well, you said they." And she says, "Well, there were three of them."
Wow.
And I said, "Well, what did they look like?" And she said, "Well, they were blue."
Oh, my Lord. You must have
And
just about dropped the orange juice at that.
thank God it was already on the table. Let's put it that way.
Oh,
And so I knew, and I just said, "Well, not to frighten her, I just wanted to get more information." And I said, "Well, honey, well, what were they doing in your dream?" And she said, "Well, they were smelling me and they were telling me that they loved me."
that's kind of strange.
Yeah. But it is and it isn't, and I'll tell you why in a minute. Um, and then I said, "Well, what's this little thing over its head?" And she says, "Oh, it's a cloud, Mommy. They come from the clouds."
Wow.
Yeah.
Very strange.
Yes. So the one thing that I wanted to say about that was I don't think it's that strange because I do feel a sense of that they do anything they can do to make the subject feel comfortable. So they tend to tell us what we want to hear to ease our fear. And so it made perfect sense to me that they said what they did to her. But at the same time, I was absolutely frightened knowing that something else very much might have happened. And to this day, she doesn't remember. She has no conscious memory whatsoever. She's 27 now. And she says, "Mommy, I don't want to talk about it. You can talk about it all you want, but I don't remember anything."
And has nothing else happened since then, I take it?
As far as she knows and as far as I know, no.
Because, from the people I've talked to, and, it's not a lot, but a fair amount, these abductions are not always nice, I love you type of scenarios.
Right.
They can be extremely scary. So has your experiences overall been nice, or have you also had other things happen that weren't so nice?
Well, I think that maybe I'm going to call myself one of the lucky ones that doesn't really have a lot of real conscious memories of a lot of malevolent situations, I have to say. I know that something happened that was not pleasant because I do get a horrible feeling when I see these beings, when I see people's drawings. And so there's definitely something negative that does resonate with me. I've never had regression. I don't have any real need for it. I don't really suffer from any sort of PTSD. I feel as if I'm remembering what I need to for myself, and I'm fine with it. But I have to say that the things that I do remember and the things that have happened as of late are actually quite the opposite, and they have a lot more to do with more of an enlightenment per se, just in knowing that there is a bigger picture, and I think we have control of how we let this affect our lives as well. And I think a lot of experiencers who have had trauma from their experiences, if they do dwell on the negative aspects of their experience, then it will be a horrible existence here on this earth. And I think that the message is to look at the positive things that you've gotten out of it and use that to grow. And that's what I've chosen to do.
So I'm assuming there has been more than one of these experiences where you actually see these entities?
Oh, yeah.
So, over the years now, I mean, what have you been able to compile as far as who these entities are, what they're doing here, where they're from, anything along those lines that you've been able to delve out of this?
Yeah, it's definitely changed quite a bit. I do feel that, based on a couple of my experiences, that they are trying to help us in a roundabout way, and it might not be the most pleasant experience to go through the things that people have gone through in hopes to help this earth and not basically self-destruct. I think there's a lot to be said about that. I think a lot of it is education on what might happen. I have had an experience where I did see, I'm going to say, like a slideshow of what potentially will happen to us. And we know now that things are changing quite rapidly in so many different ways here on this earth. And so we need to learn how to be prepared for the outcome of these events. And one of them is developing the consciousness. I really feel that very strongly. Where they're from, I think that that's changed as well. I don't necessarily believe 100% that they're from a quote-unquote star somewhere in the galaxy. I do really believe that they are interdimensional beings, that they do travel here through a different dimension. I believe they're all around us all the time. I think there are, I'm going to say, I get this feeling of almost a dimensional overlap, and they kind of blip in and out of our reality here and there. And that's why we see these UFOs the way that we do. They appear and then they disappear. I don't think they fly away at warp speed at all.
Now, are you one of those that believe that there are several different types of entities out there, good, bad, what have you? We, like you said, you saw the mantis looking entity. There, of course, are the grays and the blondes that you hear about, the reptilians. Now, do you believe that all those entities exist somewhere out there?
I do. I really got a strong feeling that, in a weird way, I think that as much as some of them are so separate, I think that a lot of them are now also working together. I also have been thinking a lot lately about the fact that they might have been here first. I think there's a lot of references that we've seen as of late due to things that we're learning about our own Earth.
Yeah.
That quite possibly they were here before us, and maybe they are us as well.
I think a lot of people would tend to agree with that. Who knows? Maybe they're from the future, and coming back. The fact that they could tell us what's going to happen to us, it would make sense that they were from the future, perhaps. Hard to say.
Yes, it would.
You know what I'm saying? So, what made you decide to go public with this? And when you did, you did it in a pretty large way. You started your own radio program, Random Alien Brain Droppings. Now, first of all, I got to ask you, where did you come up with that name? And number two, why did you decide to go about it in such a big way when you went public?
I'm not really quite sure what compelled me. I started writing a blog by the same name, and somebody asked me to do an interview, and it seemed quite natural for me to speak about this if I was writing about it. I have a feeling about my path here, and I feel very strongly that I am a conduit, and in that respect, I felt what a better way to connect other experiencers than to speak about it publicly and have them contact me so that I can connect them with each other and maybe help educate each other. Just like you said before, these blue beings have come up.
Right.
Those types of things might help put the pieces of the puzzle together for all of us.
Absolutely.
To get some sort of a resolution to maybe why these things are happening in the first place.
Well, when now this radio show, is it on a weekly basis or a monthly basis? When do you do the show?
Well, actually, I did have a radio show once a month as of a couple of months ago, but now I'm actually on my own, and I have a YouTube channel.
Oh, okay.
And I'm also have they're available on iTunes and on Podbean as well.
Oh, okay. Where on YouTube can people find
It's
you?
on my it's just put in Suzanne Chancellor.
Okay.
And I have all of my interviews there. I'm just about to post a couple more. I just started this about a month ago, so it's quite new. And I just made them available for download on iTunes as well.
Oh, excellent. Excellent. So I take it you're going to continue with the radio show? Great.
I'm just getting started.
Well, I've talked to other people that have, battled this question of, should I go public? And, it's a very scary thing for people, I think. But once they do it, I think it's just a big weight off their shoulders, and I think they feel very glad that they did. But
I agree. I agree, and thank you for saying that, because I definitely encourage people to contact me, and if they want to remain anonymous, that's totally fine with me. But I think it's really nice to have somebody that's been through the experience themselves to talk to.
Absolutely.
And by getting this weight off their shoulders and also getting some support. And that's why Starborn Support is really a wonderful organization. I'm actually now the chapter director in Rhode Island for Starborn Support. So if people need support, they need to talk to somebody. The help is out there. I mean, the groups are very few and far between. I did not have that in California. I wish I had. But it's definitely been a great resource also of information, and also helping those who are suffering from PTSD and are resorting to other things to quote unquote numb the pain, so to speak. I know a lot of people have turned to alternative, methods like drinking and drugs and trying to numb the pain when all they have to do is just talk about it. Right.
And it now, I know the subject of UFOs has gotten a lot less taboo over the last several years, but the abduction thing is still a little bit out there. I think, as far as publicly speaking about it, people, the rank and file is who I'm talking about here. I don't know whether they're accepting as they would be to someone who was just talking about UFOs. I don't know, but the only way that it's going to get there is by people talking about it. So people such as yourself and others that are, have that strength to come out and talk about it publicly, I think are doing a great service.
Well, thank you.
Well, we're getting low here on time, so I wanted to let you mention you had done you spoke publicly for your first time last year at Experiencers Speak, I believe, in Maine.
Yes.
And now you're going to be doing that again. Is that correct? Coming up in September?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I'm very excited about it. I'm very thrilled that they actually asked me to come back. So it's definitely an honor.
And Stanton Friedman's going to be there, Travis Walton, Peter Robbins, Kathleen Martin, who's been on this show before. September 6th, 7th, 8th in Portland, Maine. Are you going to, what day do you, are you going to be doing something on one certain day? Or are you going to be there the whole 3 days or what?
Well, I am going to be there for 3 days. It's a 3-day event. Friday evening is a meet and greet dinner with all the speakers.
Ah,
And then I'm speaking Saturday morning at 10:30. And then after the event on Saturday and on Sunday, there will be a panel with all of the speakers for everyone to ask questions after
oh, that'll be
the
good.
presentations, which is really great. I'm really looking forward to that. And it's being held at the Clarion Hotel in Portland, Oregon. And
Portland,
there is
Oregon, or Portland,
I'm
Maine?
sorry, Portland, Maine.
Okay.
It is in Portland, Maine. I'm sorry. My daughter lives in Portland, Oregon. I got a little confused there. But tickets are still available, but there's only a few.
So going fast.
So
And this is called Experiencer Speak?
Yes, it is.
Oh, okay. Okay, so
Yes.
that's the name
And
of the thing.
if people would like to buy tickets, they can do so at www.experiencerspeak.yolasite.com. That's YOLASITE.com.
Okay.
Or they can They can contact Audrey Hewins at 774-766-2558 for tickets.
All right. Well, we'll get that up there so people will have that info. I know we have a lot of people up that way that watch this show, so perhaps they would like to attend. It sounds like a great bunch of speakers, and of course, you will be there.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
What about these books you're writing? From what I see, you've got one that you're writing about your personal journey, and then you're doing another one on synchronicity and how it has affected your life as far as meeting your cosmic twin.
This is correct.
And so what is your cosmic twin?
Well, it's kind of a long story, but I'll give you a little snippet.
Okay.
Through the experience here in speaking publicly, somebody contacted me after hearing my interview with Whitley Strieber on his Dreamland segment for his website, unknowncountry.com. And upon reaching out to me, he basically told me that his experiences mirrored mine, and it was definitely a weird chain of events that led us to actually be in a relationship together. And I moved to Rhode Island last December.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, it's really an amazing story.
Well, we'll have to do another episode just to talk about that.
I would love to.
Absolutely. Well, listen, it's been a very interesting conversation. I know there's just so much more we could talk about, and we just kind of went around the edges on this. So definitely like to have you back on, and we'll drill down a little deeper into some of these things. I would definitely like to connect you up with this other person, this other young woman, regarding the blue beans. I would love to have you guys chat together.
Wow.
Because I think she would like to talk with you as well, because
That sounds great.
that was just too much of a coincidence.
That is really interesting. You know who else had that experience is Whitley Strieber.
Is
He
that
wrote
right?
about it in one of his books, definitely, which is interesting. So I wanted to also include that if anybody would like to contact me and speak about their experiences, if they're having some issues, they can do so at abducteeawareness@gmail.com, or they can visit my blog at abducteeawareness.blogspot.com.
Excellent. And then and they can also listen to your radio program as well. And
That is correct.
We'll get those links up there as well.
Sounds great.
All right, Suzanne. Well, again, thank you very much for being here tonight. And I wish you the best luck at your speaking engagement coming up on September 6th, 7th, and 8th, and on your books. Let us know when those books are about to come out, and we'll have you back on. We'll talk about those as well.
I look forward to it.
Okay. Suzanne, you have a great evening.
You too, Rick. Thank you so much, and have a great night.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Good night, everyone.
answer is